Our group gets smaller and smaller. We used to have 25 people come on Sundays, but people that come are the same ones that have come for a long period of time.
But the strength of energy is so strong.
Frank is back.
I never left.
When one starts out in spirituality, there can be utter confusion because you don't know what the hell you're looking for. So you read and read and read in order to understand what teachers are saying and students are saying and what their experiences are. But really, only you can say why you're there or you've come here. And usually we don't know. We're just there because someone heard a quote of what I said or read a blog entry or knows that I studied with Robert Adams. So they come with a more or less open mind. Wanting to learn. The trouble with that point of view is what if that person you're turning to for truth is full of shit? And you spend 8 years or 10 years with them, and you finally realize you're full of shit. But now you're much more sophisticated, and you find another teacher, or else you forswear teachers for a while. And you do it on your own. Well, I had lots and lots of teachers. I went to California because there were more Zen masters in California than in Japan at the time. I studied with 6 or 7 of them, I forget how many. And after being with them for 7 or 8 years, I hadn't the slightest clue as to what I was doing or where I was going or what I wanted to study or who is what or up and down. What are those? So finally I ran into Robert, and he seemed like the guy for me for some reason. Inside something clicked. The thing was, I didn't understand a word he said. He said, the world doesn't exist. You don't exist. Your body doesn't exist. It's like an optical illusion. Well, I had no idea what he's talking about by that. It's like an optical illusion. But I carried with me a kind of doubt that the teachers I was reading about or listening to had any idea about anything significant about living one's inner life to the fullest. Even then, I didn't know that that's what it meant for me. So I'll try to put it in a nutshell. Spirituality in the purest form is divert yourself from any external teacher. And it's upon you to figure out what you're looking for and how to look for it. So a lot of you come here because of the energies, the Shakti. And you become a bliss baby, like Mark, for so long. He was a bliss baby. But most people have no idea why they come here, except for the energies. They don't know what I'm talking about. And if they think they know what I'm saying, you're wrong. Because you can only see it from your own point of view. And your own point of view is where you come from. What your own background is. Then you attempt to put what I'm saying into your background and see if you can make them fit somehow, either by changing your background's understanding or mishearing what I'm saying. I was looking the other day at one of the many sites on Facebook that talk about Robert Adams. And in this one, Robert was saying, you must dive into the depths of yourself. And one of the people that were reading and responding to the blog said, I think that to me means you have to stay in the now as much as possible. But the thing is, staying in the now is not the instructions Robert was giving at all. He was saying you have to dive into the self, yourself. "20 years ago, I couldn't have told you what that means. But staying in the now isn't a very good instruction either. Being still in the now, what does that mean? How do you do that? So for me, no. What I talk about is becoming your own guru. By being very carefully investigative of your own subjective experience. Now, when Robert said the world doesn't exist, that's so obviously not true. I wonder why he said it was. And I asked him one day, Robert, why do you say the world doesn't exist? Because it isn't permanent? It doesn't last, it's only momentary? And he said, yes, that's it. Now, that everything changes in the world, to me, doesn't mean at all that it doesn't exist. It's just that it keeps changing. In what way is that not real? Because it's not permanent, doesn't change? That seems to be a kind of stupid position to take. So all along, I've just been observing myself, especially since I was with Robert. He died at 97. But even before that, I mostly observed myself. What does it mean to say I observed myself? What is that like phenomenologically? Well, it's like I was sitting on the porch of my house with the house in the back and nature in front, listening to the birds and watching the cars go by, etc., the external world. And then I close my eyes and I turn my attention around so I could look within. Now, I know you can't look within with your eyes, but I started by looking at the third eye and bringing my attention over my two eyes and inward about an inch and a half. And that was hard to do at first. I turned my eyes upward in the direction I wanted to focus on. Then imagine looking within my body. Over time, I was imagining looking at the inner phenomenology inside my head, which means my thinking, the words that spilled out of my mind, and all the contexts of understanding they provided. I watched the thoughts. Thoughts became like little clouds about this big at various points all around my head and inside my head. And the thoughts were of no substance. But when they approached me closer and closer, at a certain point, they disappeared as an object, and I became the thought. I continued this practice for some time, looking into myself, which gradually moved away from my head into my chest, which is where Robert says you should search for yourself. And thus I gradually became aware of my inner experience and the gradual exploration of the silence I felt within when I focused on me. This involves spending a long time becoming aware of my body sensations while I was looking into myself and realizing those sensations were not me, they were objects to me, the meditator. And I got to the place after a long while where my attention was on everything inside of me. And about that period of time, the inner space that I became aware of was dark because there was no visual sensation. But at the same time, there was a kind of light that consciousness itself had, which illumined that darkness within. But added were the tints of light making way through my eyelids, and I see a rosy background. So that background was kind of pervasive throughout my body and my mind, which was always under investigation, because I was always aware of my thoughts, and at the same time trying not to get wrapped up in those thoughts and to just observe them. After a while, I became quite adept at just residing in that emptiness, which I finally termed what I was witnessing. The emptiness of the sphere of awareness that I was experiencing of my body and my mind. That silence revealed there was a quality of emptiness to that which I was experiencing inside of me. And by emptiness, I meant I felt engulfed by an experience that was a lot like being on a mountain at night, far away from the city, so that when you opened your eyes, you could see the heavens with an intensity you'd never seen before and feel the breadth of the universe. And in that sense, I began to feel like I could be infinite, because that awareness inside of me was of my own presence. And I saw that my own presence extended to more than just my body, but to the surrounding environment to a certain extent. Such that if I heard a noise at night, I would be aware of that sound being inside of me, experienced inside of me, inside of what my body boundaries were. And I found the boundary of phenomena porous. And I could take sounds outside of me and experience them as inside. That was quite similar to the experience I had when I first went to Mount Baldy. I think it was in 1971. And we'd sit in absolute quiet in full lotus if we could make it, or half lotus if we couldn't, or just crossed legs if we could not do that. And when I got to the place I could do half lotus, I became aware that at a certain point, I realized I was no longer a human. Because now I was aware of myself as the vastness of space, the emptiness of space, a space or an emptiness that contained all things, including the sounds from outside the zendo, the sound of wind in the trees, sound of birds. It was all within me. And in a sense, I could say I was everything that I was experiencing. Because it felt like that. There was no sense of separation. The first koan I was given by Sasaki is, how do I realize God when looking at a fir tree? Can you guess what the answer is? I would go there every day, sometimes 5 times a day, to the Roshi during sesshin, during the retreat, and present my answer to the koan. I think it was about the 5th day or 6th day that I finally knew what the answer was. And when I went in and repeated what my koan was, how do I realize God when looking at a fir tree? I stood up and spread my arms out like branches and swayed in the wind, showing him that I understood that what I was the entirety of the phenomena I became aware of. And I became the fir tree when I focused on the fir tree, focused my attention on the fir tree. I was no longer red. I was a fir tree. The stress at Mount Baldy was incredible. The temperature usually hovered around 0. And we sat for many hours a day in half for full lotus. And if we ever faltered, started to fall asleep or wobbled a bit, somebody would come by and bust us over the shoulders with a stick, Giyasaku, twice. So it was always a feeling of trepidation when the Jikijitsu was walking by with a stick, whether he's going to hit us or not. We had one asshole that liked hitting everybody. He's probably chief monk there now. But what did I get out of these experiences? One of the things I learned is that everything that goes on in the mind was watched by me. And as such, was an object to me. And after a while, I realized too that my body was watched by me. And is, in a sense, was separate from me. I was neither body nor mind. But what I was, I did not know. To this day, I don't know. But what I am is highly aware of all inner phenomena that go on inside of me, from thinking to the states of my body, to any desires that come up, any emotions that come up. And now that I'm so keenly aware of these things, they hardly ever arise anymore. The inner awareness is steeped in silence and in emptiness, the experience of emptiness. There's emptiness everywhere. Emptiness is the dominating characteristic of my waking state. It's like I said before, being out on a mountain or in the desert at night and looking up in the sky, how vast it is and how bright the stars are and how vivid the experience of infinity is. And that's my constant experience. But what the hell does that have to do with everyday living? So I continued to explore. And I realized that the emptiness I perceived was just another phenomena, like my experience in my body or my experience of observing my mind. All were marked by feeling at emptiness. And the emptiness felt cool, because the emptiness took away the harshness of reality. So in effect, I found out I was nothing. That inner awareness, that inner space, it had no end. Robert was talking about on several occasions of diving deep within. I couldn't have understood that without being aware of the inner emptiness. And what he meant was imaginationally jumping into the emptiness, sinking ever more downwards and deeper into oneself, the experience of self. Which I've done for years. It seems very solid there. It's very quiet. It's very empty. But at the same time, I realized that all of those things I experienced were phenomenal. They were observables or knowables. But I realized too, there are times when I experienced nothing. Now, in deep sleep, we say we're not aware of anything, but we are. We're aware of our own awareness in deep sleep. And we do feel the passage of time within that darkness, within that emptiness, within that nothingness. So it's not like there's a nothing versus the emptiness of experience. And there's an absence of experience, which we call nothingness. But there is a true experience of nothingness at times. For example, when we have complete anesthesia for surgery. Go to sleep in a few seconds after the drug begins to take effect. And then minutes or hours later, we become aware of the world around us. And we do so in a way that's not like waking up from sleep, where there's a slow adjustment to consciousness. But the awakening from after anesthesia is sudden, and you're totally awake. And that absence of experience between falling into the medication and falling out of the medication, we don't remember a thing. That's nothingness. No experience whatsoever, no remembered experiences whatsoever. So, my meditation life has been a finding of an inner emptiness and the sense of awareness throughout my body and into the environment around me. Awareness itself seems to have its own form. And I become aware of emptiness all the time. Whenever I'm awake, I'm aware of emptiness. I'm also aware, I should have mentioned this beforehand, that I realized all language was empty. It's artificial. We learn from very young age to associate words with either space, something in space, or something in time, or something involving eating or drinking or urinating or whatever. And we learn the same concepts as everybody else in our kindergarten, in first grade, second grade, 12th grade. Then we go to college and things get murkier there. They're not so straightforward as even high school is with its set teachings. I can tell you that I thoroughly unenjoyed college. I thought most of the classes were ridiculous, a waste of time. But relieved that I had increased time to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. When I was 18, I was thinking about becoming a mercenary and joining Lumumba in the Congo. Fortunately, I didn't know how to do that, nor did I make an effort to learn. Thank God. And I just kept going to school for years and years and years. Putting off doing anything in my life. And it was easier to do self-investigation, sitting alone in my home, meditating on myself in the way I described. I find this description of the interiorization very powerful. Awareness is learning about awareness and what's in the fields of awareness. I can just sit in awareness and not understand it in the least, but I can know where it is, what its limits are. As to the diving within, I always did that. Even when I was just sinking my attention from my eyes down into my body, I was aware that the whole process was a sinking into my own existence and witnessing the newly discovered things that keep coming up. What it's like to be inside oneself. What it's like to look into oneself and see only darkness, but lit by a separate light of consciousness. And I went through a long period of identifying experiences of the outside world as really being mine. The sounds I heard, the wind, birds, people talking, sound of cars, as really being me. They didn't seem separate anymore. The absence of a visual distancing made identification with external phenomena possible. I even had states when I was fully awake and my eyes were open and I became the world. But totality was global, contained my body and what I could see or hear of the world. I used to ask myself, which is real? The way I am in everyday life, or these very frequent experiences of being everything, like the fir tree for Roshi. What did I learn from that? Nothing really. Except that was this natural part of me as breathing and feeling my diaphragm move. The emptiness became a very I can't think of a word that describes how warm and comforting it feels to be an all-encompassing surrounding emptiness. And the emptiness takes away from the solidity and the sureness of knowledge of anything we think. The emptiness is particularly influential on verbal understanding and thinking. Emptiness takes that reality away of our subjective interpretations of our understanding. You can't be a Nazi or a communist anymore. When all of these ideas are penetrated and suffused in emptiness. Emptiness becomes your reality. The meaning of words disappears. They're just meanings, they're just there, but not your true identity. Your true identity is with emptiness. As long as you have an identity, and all kinds of identities begin disappearing about this period of time, until you have no identity. You don't know who you are because you've exhausted for years identifying yourself as a student or a teacher or a bus driver or a mechanic. You know that is just something in your head, your mind. The entirety of meaning disappears for you. And you become intimately aware of the silence and emptiness within. But what do you do with that? I don't know. What have you done with it? You can't build a life around that, in the sense you build a house. What it does to a certain extent is takes away your humanness from you as your existence. And you become more a witness of everything, including your self-experiences. So now you begin to realize that the core of you cannot be found. You can know where it is looking inside of yourself, going deeper and deeper into the light of consciousness within. And you can go deeper and deeper, and then all of a sudden, at a certain point, your awareness turns around from inside of you to the world outside. You made a sudden change from being inner directed, it's going downwards and inwards as far as possible until there's a turning. You can't penetrate that source. But what happens at that source, you become turned around and become the observer of the outer world, while you had been observing the inner world, that space and that light within you, going deeper and deeper into it. Suddenly, you turn around and it feels like you've lost your meditation. But actually, meditation was showing you your two sides, inner awareness, and what that reveals turns around into an outer awareness. But his outer awareness is totally unknowing, totally silent. There's nothing cognitive in it. You are just there. You don't understand anything, and you don't try to understand anything. Not that you are frozen into stupidity. You're fully able to respond to the situation, but you do so without the mind. One of my Zen masters characterized it by saying, you become quite ordinary. Nothing special, nothing deep. And absent the mind. And from that position, you interact with the world. The world comes to you and you respond to it without the mind. The mind is gone. It comes back. But right now, when that happens, the mind is gone. And you notice you're living without it, without its protection, without its interpretation, without its knowledge. And you find out you do fine without your mind. After several of those experiences, the mind as a whole becomes an object to you. It no longer bothers you. You no longer follow what it's doing. Instead, you do what you're doing, which could be reading or going in a kayak down a river. and your total mind is empty and open, and you can observe the mind in the background, just going on and on about all kinds of drivel. But you pay it no attention. You don't need it at that point. If at some point you need it, it's available. If you need it, for example, to learn how to drive along with all the regulations about driving, you use your mind. But it's not you. No longer the slightest inclination to think of your mind as you takes place. Same with your body. You know you're not your body. You experience emptiness, but you're pretty sure you're not the emptiness either, although that's how you experience everything now, with just emptiness of not having thoughts and not having ideas and not having labels and not having names, forms. All those are gone, wiped away by emptiness. You just live in the present, so to speak, without thought, just by whatever intuition you have, not without thinking, or it is not with thinking. You don't need thinking to live. And to have a deeper appreciation of the world and everything else by not having ideas interfering with your experience, either of yourself or of the world. And it's always titillating to be diving into yourself and getting some glimpses which appear to be of the depth of the self, and then turning around. What I do now is try to isolate where certain functions are located inside the inner emptiness. And to a degree, I can do that. To locate where the center for vision is inside my body. And same with feeling the body. Where is that located? Is there a center or is there a core? A master organizer and coordinator. Well, you can get hints of it, but at the same time, you're at that place where awareness usually flips from inside to outside at that boundary. But at that boundary, there are still things that can be learned and experienced. So you're never left without entertainment or something to do. But your time of being lost is over. Because feeling lost is really feeling absence of any understanding of the world. Where you are, who you are, where you're going. Well, what happens with many years of meditation is not understanding who you are, and where you're going. But the absence of knowing, the experience of feeling lost, because essentially you're lost all of the time, without thought, without direction. But you find it quite enjoyable. You're not carrying a gun anymore. You're just you, unarmed. But you don't feel as if you need a gun anymore. Does anybody have any comment or question? Tim, you're new. Do you have a question?
I don't really have any questions because my mind is slowed right down.
Is what?
Slowed right down, or
Good.
just feel very.
That's the Shakti.
Yeah, I guess it must be, and I really can't find anything to say at this time. But thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
It's also this way I speak and the vast range of experience it talks about. At some point or another, you know that there's nothing really to grasp. And all that you have to do is listen to catch the gist of what I'm saying.
Mhm.
And that also silences your mind because you're no longer looking to understand, because trying to understand me is not easy. Because my experience has always been about there's nothing to understand. It just disappears. Everything disappears.
Thank you. Yes.
You're welcome. Okay, Mark.
Okay, we have some content to fill here, so I'll do my best. So I said a long time ago, Ed, that I have no problem. Like basically my experience of what you talk about is the same as yours, but my way of expressing it is very different than yours and not as eloquent. But so that's my opinion about where I'm at. The thing is, though, I used to get very distracted or fascinated by the different displays that sometimes occur when I go deep within. But I just want to tell you that I no longer get distracted. Like I realize that in order to go deeper, I need to experience the totality and not to be an observer fascinated by portions of what's being displayed. So what you call the divine energies and the sounds and the feelings and all that, they continue to happen just as they always did. But I seem to have become more refined in my understanding of what to do with it and how to abide in it. And also the deeper I go, the more cemented, the more anchored I feel in all of this, and I feel extremely anchored at this point. And the more freedom there is, the more freedom. So it's as if the self begins as a very contracted. When they first came here, the self was very contracted, muffled over, and concealed a lot of stuff through the layers of identification. But now there's deep vistas of the self that continue to become more available, and it's just better. It's just better. And also my way of expressing some of what you said is that for me, it's the love of beingness that drives the thing for me. Like my concepts are pretty simple. So the love of beingness is so much better than the old way of being, that the old way of being has lost interest for me because it's obviously no good. It's obviously a cage. It's a prison. And compared to what beingness offers, compared to what being myself offers, the old way of being is undesirable. You know, if
Well
it's
put.
something, yeah, go ahead, Ed. Sorry.
That's it. Well put.
Okay, I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Ed.
Frank, any comment? It's interesting watching your face during satsang and
Yeah.
the effect my words have on your facial features.
Oh,
And whether
what
you're
do you
nod
notice?
yes or like that.
The ever-increasing experience of stillness is really becoming the primary way that life is for me. The thing that is most prevalent in my latest understanding is how much I have projected my essential nature onto external forces. That I did it for 30 years with that teacher, and being in the process of withdrawing that back to myself, I see that that projection happens everywhere. It happens onto a label, a title, a role. How subtle and yet how continuous that process is until I become conscious of it and then can catch it and interrupt it in the moment it comes to consciousness.
So you're
But I can-
talking about the process of identification and how it has to be overcome so that you don't identify with what you identified with previously, that linkage is broken.
Yes, yes. And also it's because the pervasiveness of the stillness has become such that I can see, I don't even know who the I is, but it is possible to see when those identifications, when that projection is present. Before, there was so much inner noise that I just wasn't even aware to look. So that's been the biggest shift that's happened in the past couple of months for me, and it seems quite significant.
Good.
Yeah.
Bernadette, have you anything to say?
I don't know. Thank you. Thank you for all your methods and things you say. Feeling emptier all the time. Not sure what I identify with. Don't care as much.
You're becoming good for nothing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's almost scary. Yeah. I like to do nothing. It almost feels like I sink into myself. It's almost like falling asleep, like right before sleep overtakes you, that wonderful, peaceful feeling, and just sitting in that for a long time and not wanting to be disturbed. So yeah, it's getting harder to do ordinary things. But I don't know, it's good. I like to listen to chant a lot, because when you said about I feel sounds when I'm in that state.
Yes.
And so the chant gives me something to be, in a way. When
Yes.
I don't know what I am, I become the chant. I feel like a vibration, and it's very, very pleasant. And I spend hours and hours a day just sitting and hardly doing anything but listening to chant. And
Which chants?
oh, all kinds. A lot of Krishna Das, and but a lot. I have a playlist that's over 700 songs, so I just put it on shuffle, and it's all different moods, and some are very, very beautiful. And yeah, I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what's happening, but it's happening.
Jay,
I hope you post this satsang because it was exquisite. Your words just help me to loose the bounds, the bonds, actually, not the bounds, bounds being bound, but the bonds of the mind in a way that I haven't, I still deal and live in split mind a lot, but I know the language of attainment, but I don't feel it. I feel more here. I feel the exquisiteness. I feel the Shakti. I was reading Robert Adams the other day, the transcripted satsangs. I was reading Terence Gray, who's same lineage more or less as Robert. Today was very powerful. I mean, I'm lost. I'm lost in mundanity in a way, but I'm letting it go. I'm putting it down. I have to. I can't read about it. I can't watch it. It hurts. It actually hurts to try and watch the world and try to fathom some of the things
yes,
that
it
are going
does.
on.
It does.
I can't do it. I don't want to do it. What Bernadette said is absolutely true. I have hours and hours of chants, which I listen to. I'm at a point in my life where, because of all the circumstances which allow me to do this, to simply be in the moment, in the now moment, and to try to go dumb as a rock. Everything that you've said, I try to use your words. I try to go back, and there are satsangs that are extraordinary, but today was beautiful, Edgy, and you were my beloved, and I loved today's message. We're the hardcore. We will always be here, and it's exquisite. You could be filling halls. Your message is as perfect as anyone, any of the sages or whatever, the 20th, 21st century. Your message is exquisite. It's perfect. It's God manifest in a way that I cannot. There are no words to describe it. It's absolutely exquisite. Your message is explosive, powerful, abiding, sustaining, and grace and bliss in a way that I just blows me away. And you did it again. And I love you.
Thank you, Jay. Well, Tim, are you ready to become good for nothing?
I'm pretty sure I am. Thank you so much.
Finally, I've come to a teacher that wants nothing, expects nothing, and expects you to lose everything.
Yeah.
It's not a win-win situation here. It's a lose-lose situation. But in that losing, winning.
Yeah. Cool.
I just realized there's no Ian and Cassie today. I wonder. Lost on the road somewhere in Byron Bay in New South Wales.
Oh, yeah.
Probably waylaid by critters. Everything in Australia is out to kill you. It's not a friendly place.
I think they went to Japan. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, you're
they
right.
traveled.
You're right. That's true. Okay. Thank you,
BJ,
Mark.
anything you want to say?
Did you ask me?
Yes.
Oh. Today it was so peaceful, and there's a lot of Shakti, and that provides me the peace. It was so good today, whole day, whole time. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I still didn't understand what the diving means, and I don't know how to dive imaginatively into somewhere.
What means?
Diving deep into
Oh.
yourself. I didn't understand what it meant and how to do imaginatively into somewhere nothing. But that's fine. Probably slowly I'll get the way you get it. Hopefully it will not take me 20 years, but
You know, sometimes I don't post satsangs because a day later I don't remember what I said or what the topics are. So I would have to post talks and have nothing as a headline for it, except saying something. This is another period of bullshit. Number one, bullshit. Number two, etc. And there's no way for people to decide whether to listen or not based on the subject matter. But the subject matter I would put on the videos are nowhere near what the subject matter actually was. I don't know what to call this talk. Confusing bullshit that may make you feel good.
The dive into nothing.
how to dive deep within.
Tell VJ how to dive. What do you mean by it, Adam?
Well, today I agree with Jay. It was powerful and wonderful, and I also fell asleep in the middle of it. So I think that even
No, that's
double
pretty good.
verifies.
That's good. That's
I
good.
was super
Those who
relaxed.
are going deeper in themselves are often finding themselves going to sleep. Can happen anytime. To go from bare awareness to no awareness.
Yeah. Well,
Vesselina, what do you think about the bullshit I talked about today?
It was great. Great bullshit.
Great bullshit. That's the title. Excellent bullshit.
Just make it great bullshit number one, and then just keep numbering them. Number 2, 3. We all know. We'll all be.
Maybe I'll call it bullshit to make your day. Okay, everybody. I love you all.
Love you.
Just keep diving within and keep trying to understand what that means for those who don't know what it means. To dive within and then to actually do it. And this is one of, I consider, Robert's most important teachings. He often defines meditation in many, many different ways, but this instruction is to dive deeper and deeper into your sense of self. That, to me, is the cat's ass of spiritual instructions. Learn how to dive into your own subjectivity and go deeper and deeper and deeper and further away from the world, awareness of the world.
There's the title, The Cat's Ass of Spiritual Instruction. There you go. If you need another title.
That's good. My favorite cat of all times was Kali. Maybe I should title it Kissing Kali's Ass. She being the supreme teacher. figuratively, absorbing her silence. You know, there's something about people who truly love animals and can look a cat or a dog in the eye and just stare at them as they stare at you. And you feel the depths of the bonding of you throughout your whole body. And a kind of joy that's superlative. And it's not something that you often experience with people, because people are far more complex. But what you get for the animal in the moment is their total attention, total love or infatuation, and you have that for them too. It's a simplified version of interacting with human beings who are complex, like you are. You still are. You become a dumbass like me after a while. And you don't know. Anyway, I love you all. Let's see who the computer says I should have take over. Okay. Jay, Mark, Eddie, Egeman, Chris, and Bernadette. Somebody who wants to lead, raise their hands. Mark. Anybody else? Mark, you got it.